So really good fundamentals of Sydney suburbs in the first instances are no different to anywhere else. You'd want consistently low supply and demand from a wealthy income demographic. Now, the reason this is important is because if there's consistently low supply, you've got nothing but basically people who have to fight over each other to get an asset, which they will pay more because naturally speaking, people bid things up against each other. And secondly, if the demand's also from a wealthy income demographic, what happens is the amount they can bid it up goes up substantially. So, for example, if you're bidding in an area in outer Sydney, let's say it's some new estate in the west, right? They're all first home buyers and investors, so they do have their limits as to where they can bid. If you're bidding against someone in Bellevue Hill, it's billionaire against billionaire, so they'll bid it until one basically gives up and the other gets the house. That's basically what they do. They don't, because the incomes are completely different in different areas. So access to high paying jobs is a big one. Sydney basically has all the jobs practically in the eastern part of the city. You do have Parramatta and I'd say Bella Vista that also do have large employment hubs as well. Obviously, it's Eastern Creek is a more blue collar sort of employment hub, should I say? So when I say eastern part of the city, I mean lower North Shore, eastern suburbs, inner west. That's basically where almost all the jobs in Sydney are. So access to high paying jobs is important. Lifestyle triangle as well. For people from Adelaide or regional centre, if you're within from work to school to lifestyle areas within about half an hour, for Sydney, that is pretty good. Most people will be very happy with that. So if you've got a good lifestyle triangle, that's good. That goes along with accessibility. Accessibility is important because certain parts of Sydney are more accessible than others. So, I mean, there's really good examples of that, especially in somewhere like Sydney's Northern Beaches, because they don't have a train line. I mean, what you've got is some suburbs where the bus lines and you've got ferries are very good, than others that are quite affluent and all that kind of thing too, but they're actually quite hard to get to and from. So it also does play a thing for good suburbs and getting tenants or living longer term in the suburb. School zones, very important in Sydney. So unlike, should I say, some other sort of cities, school zones in Sydney do play a large part. It's actually a quite common theme among many capital cities, especially if you're buying in inner affluent suburbs. School zones are important, but school zones, what it does is, it's particularly your top performing private schools, your affluent private schools in Sydney. You've got quite a lot of very wealthy families that all live there. They stay there a long time because their kids generally take, 6 to 10 years to get through those schools, sometimes more if it's a K to 12, or their primary school is very close by as well. So the whole period goes up, and you've got people that have a lot of money that live in these areas, so that's also very important. Facilities / hospitals. Facilities in Sydney, again, are very important. If you look at the established neighbourhoods, they've got everything nearby. Hospitals, as I've mentioned here, specialist care. You've got every sporting facility, parks nearby. You've got, even just general, should I say, community things going on all the time, where facilities to facilitate that happening. Hospitals are very important because hospitals create capital growth because healthcare is always going to be there. And a hospital generally has very stable employment. And it also has wealthy people that work in hospitals. So doctors, surgeons, dentists, anaesthetists, you name it, there's a number management staff that are all government backed, and they will always be there, government and private backed often actually as well. So those are fundamentals of good Sydney suburbs. If you can get the vast majority of them, particularly the first two, very well, you're going to do quite well in buying in Sydney. Look, what's really driving the Sydney market now? Again, first things first, and it goes to the first point I made of a good fundamental of a Sydney suburb: long-term supply and demand. I've brought up previously on a few Sydney episodes an example of Clovelly, and just showing you how many houses are for sale at any point in time on the market there. And there was like 6 or something like that. And I showed it over multiple periods, and it was still like anywhere between like 3 and 10 at any point in time. And there's probably hundreds of properties that you could buy in Clovelly. But anyway, that's an example of a suburb that just never has anything on market. So kind of whatever they ask for it is kind of what they get generally. And even in a cold market, they'll still get a reasonable price for their property because it's just so tightly held. Whereas if you go to Box Hill or Melon Bar or anywhere like that, out that kind of way, go and just look at what's for sale. There's generally like 100 houses for sale. And on some of those listings, it might have one, icon dot on real estate or domain. And it says, 50 sold, 34 to go or something like that of the next lot. So they're often not one, they're often multiple. So that's a little bit about, supply and demand. Transport and employment hubs, very important in Sydney. Employment hubs, again, they're all sort of towards the eastern part of the city. So apart from Parramatta and Bella Vista, really, with I'd say wealthier people living, working in them. But transport's becoming a thing because of the transport-orientated plan and the metro. The Sydenham, particularly the Tallawong or Bankstown, should I say, line that will open up next year, that is going to cut down time completely. So is some parts of the new Inner West line that's running through the Bays, Burwood North, and right through to Parramatta. That line as well is going to be also a very, very large driver of the cycle. Also, long-term demographics. People want to live near where people of a similar demographic are to them. So wealthy people don't move to poor areas. Sorry, I know it sounds snobby, but it's just the truth. They just don't. That's just not what they do. So keep that in mind. Don't follow the bullshit that the media tell you. It's just not the truth. That's just another thing about Sydney. People with money want to live near other people with money, or otherwise very close, generally to the harbour or somewhere like that, or a good lifestyle area. Price points is another one. Obviously, the 5% deposit scheme is affecting Sydney quite a bit, which is obviously good for owners, very hard for people wanting to buy there. But even price points in different areas. So I'll give you an example. Inner West sub 2 million, Northern Beaches sub 2.5, North Shore sub 3, Eastern Suburbs sub 3 million, Sutherland Shire sub 2 million, St George sub 2 million. All those areas are very, very much so in demand. And often you'll get fierce battles amongst people for that. So my suggestion is, if you don't have a buyer's agent like myself or someone who knows what they're doing to help you, you need to go looking for what is value of the property. So understand the value proposition of each property, because those ones are often underquoted and they know that they're going to sell for significantly more. So don't fall for that fallacy trap. That's just something that is common in Sydney. People from Melbourne will know what I'm talking about too. It's very common in Sydney and Melbourne, though, underquoting.